understand. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday! Welcome to the Jam and Shred Dojo with Master Lee. I am Christopher Lee Weiss, a.k.a. Master Lee, and we are going to do some jamming. We're going to talk about some guitar theory and talk about some concepts that you can use to actually play, get some good ideas over music, or even just write your own melodies and things like that. As far as what we're going to do, let's get started and just do a jam. on fast. Yes. I'll hold off on that one just for a second. Some of the things that, we really kind of what I'm using mostly on that jam was pentatonic and the octave, right? Also trying to spell out the chords of A minor. There's a lot of chords there. We're going to do something similar with B minor. And so think about the notes in B minor. It's just B, D, and F sharp, right? So just looking at on the G string, we have B on the 4th fret. We have D on the 7th fret. And we have F sharp on the 11th fret. Now we also have those an octave higher too, so we can add 12 to all of that, right? So we have 14, 17, 16, 19, and if you have 24 fret guitar, it would be 23. But again, just trying to use those same notes. Now, once we know where those notes are, at least on the B string, we can play an octave with that, up on the A or the A string, just 2 frets back. So same thing. And again, let's use that. Let's listen to me use that over the next jam and just try to see if we can create a melody. Now, again, I'm thinking B minor. So B minor, B natural minor, which would be D majors, relative major. Again, it's always easy to figure out, your relative majors and minors because it's 3 half steps, right? So if you're in minor, so it's B, you just go up 3 half steps. So we'd have, C, C sharp, and then D, right? So D is the relative major. And so that's how I know what the rest of the notes are. If you don't know the notes that are in, B minor. But same scale, right? Just using 2 sharps, C sharp and F sharp. Let's do one. Oh yeah, that was a good one. Now again, I use some chromatics in there too. I'm going to kind of go back over that too. You can kind of play, like I said, we talked about before, knowing that we have B, F sharp, and D, or B, D, and F sharp. If we're going to think about it in order, I always kind of think of the fifth first, maybe because of the way the chords are voiced, but always think of the resolves. Not that the F sharp doesn't resolve, but again, that's kind of the F sharp is kind of the special note, right? Because that's the note that makes it unique to that particular chord. Thinking of B major, we have B, right, D sharp, and the F sharp. Whereas with the minor we'd have D and the F sharp. So the F sharp and the B, kind of thinking of along those lines, are always the same in each one. That D is the one that makes the chord change, right? So D and B minor, and then D sharp and B major. So let's listen to that. Go back to that a little bit and talk a little bit about the chromatics a little bit, and I'll kind of talk over that while we're doing that. I can get the right track to play here. Okay, so thinking of like B, right? So I got B, and then I've got my D, and then I've got F sharp. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of play chromatically from the F sharp back. I'll go, but making sure I end on that B, right? So we can do a longer line. But again, we play chromatics too long and it sounds like, just kind of like, well, it sounds like this. But sometimes it sounds cool, right? Other times it sounds kind of like a hornet's nest in your mind, which again, sometimes that's good. Sometimes we want that, right? That's always what we want. Well, not always what we want, but sometimes. Thinking of like just using the other notes, like A. A would be minor 7, right? So that kind of gives us kind of a nice little spot to add a little flavor to it. To force the resolve back to B. And it will you can resolve the other direction too down that sharp, right? So A. Right? But thinking again, D, B, and F sharp as I play through that. So again. So again, basically I started off with the arpeggio B, D, and F sharp, went down to A, came back to the D, and resolved on the B. So again, this is just the basic concept of everything that we're kind of doing as far as just trying to improvise over these particular chord changes. These chord changes are actually, pretty static, meaning they don't really, at least this one anyway, doesn't really move anywhere. We'll do some some different jams here in just a second where the chord changes change. It's kind of they're just a different animal when you solo over them. Obviously, if you're going to solo over a static chord change, you have to kind of maybe think of superimposing other chords onto it. Think about this. Hold on for 1 second, man. I got to move my pedal. All right, cool. It's like I was trying to hit my wah-wah pedal earlier, and I felt like I was trying to step across the room. So, but the basic idea of, like thinking of extensions. This is a Frankenbali. I'm sure lots of players do this, but I learned it from Frankenbali. Not specifically from Frankenbali. That would have been awesome. But no, I learned it from one of Frank's books. But basically what you do is you kind of think of like breaking up a larger chord into smaller chords. We'll move over to A. So I'll do something here in an A minor jam. We can talk about that just a little bit. But, think about like an A minor 9, right? A minor 9, if you really want to think about an A minor 9, you've got A, C, E, G, and B. So you've got all of those notes, A, C, E, G, and B. But if you take the first 3 notes, A, C, and E, that's a triad arpeggio of A minor, right? Now you take the next, don't just eliminate the A, right, and start on the C. C, E, and G, that would be a C major triad arpeggio. And then you would have B, or then you would have G, excuse me, not G, C, E, C, A, C, and E. So we have our A, C, and E, C, E, and G, and then we'd have E, G, and B at the end. So E, G, and B, so it's E minor, right? So I'm using basically A minor, C major, and E minor. All of those kind of spell out the arpeggio tones of that particular chord. Now again, I'm playing over power chords, so there really isn't any 7s or 9s in there. But again, the sound is very cool when it sounds when you hear it in there. So let's do a little jam on that. Let's say hi to MacLover81, dude. Oh, as I'm out of focus. Hey, thank you for joining us again, my man. I really appreciate it. Again, using that same kind of concept, you know, I was using the same, you know, I kind of see the arpeggios all over the guitar. So in the case of like playing the A minor, right? So think of like... Then I move on to that next one up, right? C major. And then into E minor. Again, still kind of coming back to the A. So I'm still using A, but I'm still using the E minor. Kind of pushing out to that 9, which is the B. And back into the A, right? So let's kind of get that one rocking one more time here. Just kind of get that to play. Okay. Same concept, right? So using those arpeggios. Start with the A. We'll go. Move on to C. Resolve up to the A, then E minor. Go back to the A. But again, just the real... Man, got to work on my camera there. I'm kind of leaning forward into my microphone and blurring myself out. Don't worry, nobody's, you know... your vision is fine. As far as just, you know, using the theory... It's just being able to manipulate it, right? It's always the same notes. It's always the same notes. I'm always playing the same thing. It's just that as far as me being able to play pieces of it is what makes it different, right? Let's do another jam. again, same kind of concept. Use the same ideas, right? I just did it in E minor instead of A minor, using the arpeggio shapes. A lot of the things, everything. Keep things melodic. You got to use the arpeggios, right? We can play like chromatic and like just scalar stuff over that, but it's a little harder to memorize those things, right? And again, as far as like guitar players, we can memorize them. Piano players, we can memorize them, but it's always kind of like if when somebody listens back to what you play and they can't remember some of the little things that you did, it's probably, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously sometimes I just shred and go crazy and I'm just playing super fast. Tonight, trying to keep it a little bit more melodic just to try to force myself to be a little different than what I've been on nights previous. Just kind of more of an exercise I do with myself, right? Just always trying to make it something different. Sometimes it doesn't turn out okay. That's okay, right? It's all part of the just trying to do it, right? Let's change things up a little bit. Let's do a little bit more of a mellow one. Let's see what we got here. Let's do kind of that one. time on the stop. All right, cool. Yeah, it does kind of sound like Marty a little bit. What a good comparison to be. What a good guitar player to be compared to, right? Marty Friedman, definitely one of my all-time favorite guitar players. I always loved Marty Friedman not only because he's a fantastic musician, but also he held his pick so weird. It must always looked like he had his hand in like a hook shape. Hey, it doesn't matter how you hold your pick, right? I mean, it doesn't even matter if you play it with your toes or you use your fingers or whatever else. I just always liked the guys that had kind of an odd look to them when they played. It just always was like, oh, that's really cool. But again, I think what is he? He's like the music ambassador. He's some like the cultural ambassador to Japan now. Marty's like crazy. He's like not only lead guitarist from Megadeth, from Cacophony with Jason Becker, and all of his own solo work. He's like a delegate. And I got to watch out for those metal dudes, man. They'll overthrow the government. So, but a lot of great things. Just thinking of Marty, that kind of gives me an idea. One of the things that Marty did quite a bit is he would bend half steps into what you were supposed to be playing. So this is actually quite a bit of fun. You can actually do this. Just using the tones of the scale that you're playing. For example, if in this case, let me kind of demonstrate that here. Let's go back and we'll play that jam again. Okay. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the note B, right? But I'm going to go from B flat. Now we don't want it to like release the B flat because then it's B flat. Just a really cool technique, right? It gives it that kind of like just off. It kind of sounds like it goes into pitch, but almost as kind of like I don't want to say a sick sound, but it has that like. But a cool technique nonetheless, just to give you something to try to change it up. Remember, we only have 12 notes, right? It's kind of like trying to color a picture with, it's like you color one picture with 12 crayons. You're like, man, I really used all my colors and everything looks great. After you color like a billion pictures with the same 12 crayons, you're kind of like, man, I got to figure out something else to do. One of the other things that we haven't touched on a whole lot is using kind of, maybe multiple tones, and that's kind of one of the reasons I'm using this guitar today, I'll have my Xiphos back on Friday for the crazy metal stuff. But the one bummer about the Floyd Rose is that it's hard to do double stop bends. When you bend a string on the Floyd Rose guitar, the bridge goes, it moves. So if you actually are doing something like this, where I'm actually playing the D note on the B string on the 15th fret, and then I'm playing A on the G on the 14th, but I'm playing them together. But I want to just bend the G string. That's a little harder to do with the Floyd. Now, the Floyd itself, you can actually, my trick to use when I do it with the Floyd is actually put my hand on the Floyd and actually kind of keep it still. You can grab the bar and hold it still too. But again, they're very sensitive. You got to be careful so that you don't lose that pitch. But again, it's a good trade-off, man, because the whammy bar is so expressive. There's so many great sounds that you can get with it. I'm actually already missing it now on this guitar, even though I picked this one to kind of demonstrate some of the techniques I wanted to do today. Which one's better? Man, there isn't one. There's not a better one. It's just kind of what you're after. And really, if you really want the best of both worlds, I probably would maybe even go with like a Fender bar. Maybe something a little more modern though. Maybe like like a Paul Reed Smith bar if you can afford it on a Paul Reed Smith. But just something that will kind of keep the tuning a little better. I always had crazy trouble with my Fender trying to keep it in tune. I use bullet strings. I used the bullet strings, but even then it seemed to kind of go out on me. But man, it was a fantastic guitar. I love that guitar. I sold it to a student years ago who needed a guitar, but it was just a fantastic guitar. All right, let's just do another jam. Let's change it up here a little bit. Do something a little more metal-y. kind of fading off. That was a good one. Hey man, what's going on, Rob? That's my buddy Rob here in the chat room. This me and him go way back, man. I was in my first band with this dude. We had a lot of great times. Good guitar player, great dude, just fantastic dude. Really good to see him, man. Our first band, Dissembler, way back in the day. Oh man, we had some good times. Learned a lot of valuable lessons, like make sure you tune your guitar before you record a guitar track. Man, it's funny, you learn those lessons at one time and you never forget those lessons, right? It's one of those things where we would turn, I think we tracked the guitar separately. So, I would do my part and then we'd turn my parts off and then he would play his parts as well. And, he would get his and he'd get all the way through his track and be like, oh man, I got it, it's fantastic. Then we'd be like, oh, wait a minute, man, I forgot to tune my guitar. And then there'd be a bunch of cussing and throwing stuff around. And then, 10 minutes later, we're right back at it, getting it done. But man, those were great times. Really a lot of good fun doing those things. Lots of other great lessons you can learn just by recording yourself and making sure you're playing your own music all the time. One of the theory things that we're going to talk about kind of coming up forwards here is, a lot of the arpeggio shapes that I play a lot of triad arpeggio shapes and seventh chord arpeggio shapes. I use these seventh chord arpeggio shapes a little bit more for like melody stuff. So like I'll play the triad stuff, like maybe as I'm unplugging my guitar, so everybody in Twitch land can hear my guitar come unplugged. Like it's caught underneath my shoe. So I use a lot of triad arpeggio shapes, either like sweep shapes, like right, or I'll use the same thing down here. But I also use seventh chord arpeggios because the seventh chord arpeggios actually have a little bit more of a melody base to them. So like I play I always use this phrase, and it, again, basically B. It's kind of basically starts with a B minor, goes to E minor, and then A minor. Right? And so again, I use that shape all the time, and I use it all over the guitar, but I don't actually just do it in that way all the time. I'm just using it kind of as just a melody piece that kind of comes back and forth. So let's do another jam. Let's maybe mix it up here just a little bit, maybe play maybe a little something bluesy. All right. Definitely had some fun kind of experimenting with the 6, as Rob suggested there. Use the major 6 over that one, too. Definitely, man, I really like that sound. Kind of give it kind of a sour note. You know, that one right there, that, you know, really cool. And it's just kind of off sounding, you know. But again, that's kind of the fun of improvising, right? You know, as we say all the time, you know, you never know what it's, you know, I guess you can stay with the notes in the key, but again, that's like spray painting white spray paint on a white wall. Sure, you know, it's going to perfectly fit in, but no one's going to notice it really either. You got to kind of go outside the key a little bit and try those extra tones that are going to kind of maybe push the spice a little bit of the sound. It doesn't always work, right? Again, just like jumping out the airplane, as we say, you know, sometimes the chute opens, sometimes you just keep yanking on the cord and bang, you hit the ground and nothing happens, you know, and you kind of crash and burn. But that's kind of the fun part of it, you know, rehearsing set music and playing the set things, which we will get to. You know, I'll be presenting some of my own tunes, and we'll be jamming those and playing them exactly the way that you're supposed to do. But a lot of the things that you want to do, just to kind of set up, thanks for following, brother, is you're really just kind of setting up all the things that we want to play based off of the tonalities, right? Using the arpeggios, always coming back to those arpeggio shapes. Let's take a little break just from doing some bluesy stuff, and let's get kind of a metal jam happening. So let's do that one. boys done too soon. I gotta loop them longer, right? Man, my cord keeps getting stuck under my shoe. Got a new set behind me, but it's in a temporary location, so my cords are just kind of all over the place. Took me forever to dig all the stuff out of. I got it all out of storage to set up the set, and man, it's really dusty. There's like, man, it's all nice and black and kind of shiny right now, but when I took it out of the storage, it was kind of like gray, kind of almost like the grill of this Roland Jazz Cube, or actually Roland Micro Cube. That's a fantastic amp too. That was the amp I used to keep in my car, just so I could have it in the back. It actually plugs into a cigarette. It had a cigarette lighter adapter that was really cool. Of course, now cars come with actual outlets, so you can kind of plug any amp that you want into. At least don't want to drain your battery. But great jam with that amp. But if I'll tell you what. These amps here, these Vox Valvetronics, man, these things were fantastic. Nick knows what I'm talking about. In fact, I'm using a Valvetronics pedal, which we're jamming right now. Fantastic kind of hybrid setup. But it actually was really cool as they put a 12AX7 in the power amp section of this thing. So it's like you kind of get that digital sound. Yeah, you remember what I'm talking about. The digital sound... the preamp is digital, so it's kind of like, you get that sound, but they put a 12AX7 in the power section, so it changes the impedance, like, against the speaker, because that's kind of really what tube amps kind of sound like. Now, again, does it sound exactly like a tube amp? No. But it sounds way better than just a regular solid-state amp. This guy right here, this is a fantastic... I love the Roland Cubes. Those things were really, really good. But the Valvetronics, man, that to me was one of the coolest series. I remember going in, and they weren't that expensive either. This one, I don't know, this is like a 15-watt amp. I'm not even sure what size the speaker is. Looks like a 6-inch speaker that's in there. But that's like my main practice amp that I just kind of take around with me. Don't use it so much anymore. It needs to be retubed. In fact, almost all of my stuff needs to be retubed. But they're 12AX7, so, hopefully they'll last a little bit longer like light bulbs, And it was, Nick, it really was the closest to the tube amp that you could get. Without actually going into the tubes. And, tubes are fantastic, man, but it's like light bulbs. Man, I had a Marshall JCM 800 head back in the day. A fantastic head. Loved that head until it was stolen. Never got it back. But, man, that thing blew fuses like you wouldn't believe. We never could get that bias. This was back, I was like 18 years old, and I didn't really know how to bias the amp myself. I used to take it up to this guy at McMurray's. This was before Carlos was there. If I'd have had it when Carlos was there, I'm sure Dave Bedoya would have been able to bias it without a problem. Shout out to Dave Bedoya, man, love you, dude. But as far as when you think about I had to go to gigs with like a box of fuses, and so like every song I would actually go into the back of the amp. I'd turn like the standby, I'd turn the whole thing off, and then I go in the back and I'd undo the fuse and replace the fuse just to make sure that it didn't actually, blow on me. So, again, there was nothing like, and again, and it really, when you played around town, that was not a problem because I could buy stuff, but it always made me super nervous when we went out of town because I was like, man, I don't know where the local music store is to actually buy tubes or fuses. So it was definitely something that made me nervous. That's why the Valvetronic stuff was so great. Because it gives me that solid state power amp, but the kind of the changing impedance of the 12AX7, just really a good sound, So, yeah, I remember that too. I remember having to have a little portable fan, that we would plug in. Another thing that always drove me nuts. You're still using the a.k.a. MP2 preamp, dude. That's fantastic. Good old ADA. I think I don't even know if I still have my one. I think I sold the ADA MP1. The MP2 was way better than the MP1. In fact, most of the stuff that I use now, and my main rig, believe it or not, is I use my Vox pedal, and I go through this bass amp head. This bass head is just fantastic. It's a PV Mini Max. It actually drives these TC Electronic. These TC Electronic cabs are great too, but what's really cool is it's just really pure, clean power, and it's 500 watts. And it's also the size of like 3 or 4 DVDs stacked on top of each other. Really into the class. I think was it Class C? I think is what those amplifiers are. The Class A and B amplifiers weighed like the size of a refrigerator. And so as I'm getting older and on in my years, the Class C. Man, look, it's like 500 watts in this tiny little package, and man, it cranks. But I really use it kind of, the pedal that I use has all the EQing and all the tone capabilities I really need on it. Sure, I would definitely like 2 power amps, but again, that was it. It's it's more reliable. I was Class D. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Um, it was when you think about I guess the humidity. Man, it drove me nuts when we would go into a place and it'd be really, really humid or really dry, and my sound would be different from where it normally was. Let alone the sound guy, Rob knows because he's a fantastic sound man. But he knows what I'm talking about when you're talking about maybe a sound man that doesn't necessarily know what he's doing, and couldn't get the sound out of your amp, and I couldn't get the sound on stage that I wanted to either, and that always bothered me. And plus, have to play in some crazy room with it's completely rectangular or completely not completely rectangular, so the echo is just horrible. And that is very true. Weight matters definitely between gigs. Even now, lugging this stuff up from the basement, the bass cabs, the bass cabs over here. My camera's like reverses when I point, but the bass cabs aren't too bad. That Marshall 412 was definitely kind of a lug up the stairs, so it's definitely where it goes. Let's do another jam. ran out of that jam too. I really need to loop these longer. I'll do that in maybe I'll use Pro Tools or I'll use it was a Studio One, but I got I think it's already loaded in Studio One. I just clip it and loop it on that particular jam. One of the things that you really want to think about when you're playing a lot of these particular patterns is, just trying to keep the, and well, you don't have to think about anything, honestly. You can kind of just go for it. If you don't know theory, man, just play, right? You don't have to actually do this. But one of the things that kind of helps a lot of it, again, is always remembering those arpeggio shapes. And then just kind of thinking all the little tricks and things that you can kind of add in with those particular patterns that you're going to play. When you want to do, let's talk a little bit about, again, and that's kind of the beauty of, especially playing in modal stuff, is that once you learn all the arpeggios, it's like, it just shifts, right? So we've talked a little bit before about Mixolydian. We're going to do a little Mixolydian jam here. Kind of the difference between, like G major, which is G, C, and D, right? So major Ionian with the first mode would be, right? But Mixolydian would be the same three chords. Well, it doesn't have to be the same three chords. I'm going to use the same three chords, but really it would be the D chord at the end, which is the one that you want to kind of focus on. So, and again, it's one of the things that you really want to be able to play from a memory standpoint of forcing that chord to be the resolve. It's a simple game. How do you make one chord resolve from the other ones? Well, first of all, start with that chord, probably end with that chord, and play that chord more times than all the other chords. It's a pretty simple concept. There's other ways you could do it too, because the chords themselves will kind of resolve. Always using like the fifth up from that, like a dominant 7, also forces the resolve, right? So in the case of D, A7 always resolves to D. So you can always use that as well. So I can actually play in the same concept of using the D. I can go. Now again, in that case though, when you think about what I'm actually playing though, if I'm using D, G, and A, that's technically a 1-4-5 chord change again, right? So that's going to be Ionian again, because D is the 1, G is the 4, and A is the 5. Whereas in the other jam that I was using was D, G, and C, I'm actually kind of forcing the 5 chord to resolve, right? So, and again, one of the things that I also do over this one, which I'll actually kind of play a lot over this so you can kind of hear it, is I use a hybrid pentatonic scale. And I'm not sure, I know there's an official name for this pentatonic scale, I think, I don't know. I don't really think of the names of scales anymore. There's only 12 notes, and so the intervals, I just kind of have memorized what I'm going to play. Obviously, I have the tones of the chords, so if I'm playing over a D major, I have D, F sharp, and A. And since this is Mixolydian, is the dominant 7 chord from that particular key, so that means it's going to have a flat 7 or the minor 7, which is C. So again, once I play that, the rest of the tones I want to play. But so I think about, I love the minor pentatonic scale because the minor pentatonic scale is the most useful scale in music. Not because it just sounds good, but because it's the arpeggio pattern for a minor 7 chord, right? So it really contains, and again, it does contain the 4 or the 11, so it's kind of like a minor 7 add 11 if you want to think about that, or minor 11 no 9, or no 2, but it's basically that same concept. And so what I'm actually going to play most of the time when I'm jamming these things are a hybrid of that. So if I think about the D minor pentatonic scale, right? So if I will go, what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually just going to sharp the 3rd for that. Then it becomes kind of this like Mixolydian or dominant pentatonic scale. So I would then have, and man, this has got a really cool sound in itself, and I don't really have to learn a new scale pattern for that. I just sharp that 3rd. Let's do a jam based off that one. If I can find it in the plethora of jams here. There it is. That one's definitely a good jam. I really like that sound. Mixolydian just gives me that kind of, that kind of upbeat kind of rock sound. Again, Van Halen, Guns N' Roses gives it that kind of really cool jam. But a lot of those things are happier, brighter sounding, whereas a lot of the metal stuff is kind of dark, right? Love the dark stuff, but that's kind of what's fun about the Mixolydian stuff is you can play really quickly and just kind of get that, that jam, right? Just being able to have the sound of as opposed to something that's really, like gives it that kind of really cool, heavy sound. And again, we talk about intervals all the time. We did that before on another stream where we talked a little bit about, most of the really cool scales intervallically are really just, you're removing notes, right? We have the major scale, and then we remove some of the half steps. We remove actually the 2 half steps. Right? So we get rid of that half step, and actually we get rid of the one in the middle too, right? Which is E minor pentatonic. But we can remove like other notes, right? And so in that case of like playing Dorian, gives it that really cool kind of Asian feel. And then just playing like kind of a diminished arpeggio. All of these things are the same 12 notes. It's just we get a different tonal quality by removing certain half steps or removing, doing larger jumps, intervallic jumps. It's interesting when you start thinking about playing. I guess that's very true. It isn't a mistake if you repeat it. And that's true. One of the best things about being a great guitar player is learning to cover up your mistakes. But one of the other things too is just kind of exploring it. It's an odd dichotomy, man, because if you don't ever make a mistake, you're never going to play anything new. So if you just keep playing the same stuff and always hitting the right notes, it's gonna sound okay, but you're never going to come up with something like, hey, that's really cool. Most new songs and most new patterns come from somebody trying to play something that they already have memorized or practiced and they screw it up. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, man, what did I just do there? That was really cool. It sounds different. And you get a lot of those things. And that advice would always come from what was the old saying that if you play a wrong note once, it's a wrong note, but you play the wrong note twice, it's jazz. And don't get me wrong, I love jazz. Jazz is fantastic. But you get a lot of those different patterns and notes that you can get together just to kind of create the flavor. And again, when we think about the pitch axis, that's one of the great things about the pitch axis. Let's go back and do the pitch axis one again, but this time I'm going to talk a little bit over it just to kind of get just that kind of jam feel. Let's see where I can find that. And man, I'm getting so many jams I can't tell them apart anymore. There it is. So in this case, when you think about, like, I guess, major, right? So here's the root note of this whole thing, it's E. Now I can play major, which would be G sharp. I can play minor, which would be G. I can play Phrygian, which would be F. And then E again, or D. So that gives me major. Wait for it to come around again. That gives me minor, right? And then I can use the Phrygian. To kind of give it that edge of the seat, right? And that's kind of one of the great things about those jams. When you think about being able to play Phrygian, I love Phrygian because Phrygian kind of gives you that edge of the seat kind of, kind of jam. I used to always give my students when I was teaching a lot of the kids back in the 90s when we were doing metal stuff, and I would teach them the differences between modes. I basically would use Ionian and Phrygian to kind of differentiate the two different modes, and I would always kind of tell them to picture a scene. Picture like some nice bunny rabbit family, cute little bunny rabbits having a picnic out on the green grass, and they got their little, blanket out, and they got their sandwiches or whatever bunnies eat, But playing with their bunny toys and bunny games, and it's such a nice day, right? It's such a nice day to have the bunnies there to do some jamming, so I would use major for like that, and even to make it sound even more like the bunnies are having a good time, we use like major 7 chords, like. But then off in the distance, Farmer Joe is cranking up the old riding lawnmower, man, and he's getting it going. And unfortunately, he's heading right towards the bunnies, right? And so you think about the bunnies, they would kind of be the Phrygian jam, which would be kind of that on the edge of your seat kind of feel, like. So we would kind of click back and forth. So we'd have the bunnies. And again, you can kind of picture the scene, especially if it was like in a movie or a video, just kind of matching the music up with the scene. Not going to tell you what happened to the bunny rabbits. You can use your own imagination. You can make it end any way that you want. You can say they got out of the way or not. But again, no hate on the bunny rabbits. I definitely, definitely demented the cartoon. I love bunny rabbits. Peace to all animals. Just an example to kind of give you the idea of the, the sounds that you're going to play. It's just one of those things that helps you visualize the sound of the music. They do taste good. That's very true. That's very true. The idea of being able to play what you want from a tonality standpoint, that's really what music is about. Because again, you have an idea in your head that like the sound that you want. One of my favorite sounds is the add 9 chord, like that kind of, you always hear it in Metallica, right? That's just a great sound. I really like that sound. And being able to kind of play, like you hear it in Dream Theater actually quite a bit too. But one of the things that you hear in Dream Theater, like you hear this like, that's a really cool example too. Now again, using an F sharp major and then kind of getting the B and the E, right, which kind of gives me the 7 and the 11 from that, so again, but it's going to give me a dominant 7, right? And then that B. And the 11, what's really cool about using the 7, the dominant 7 there, is because the B is the perfect fifth of that dominant 7, so it actually kind of has that good sound. Whereas when you play B straight away with like the F major, you kind of get that, that sus4 kind of sound, That's another great sound too. The sus2, another great sound, right? Or add 9, however you want to look at it. It's the same concept. The theory rules basically kind of state that if the third is in the chord, you call the 2 the 9. If there is no third, you usually call it the 2. But again, who cares? Again, as long as you understand what you're doing as far as an interval standpoint, and you can set it up, that's really the most important thing. So let's do another jam. Let's do a little funky one. Let's get a little more rock. straight off. You know, when I wrote that, I thought to myself, man, I'll just end it kind of with the drums in, like the Chili Peppers, you know, like the whole band stops and the drums just end. It's just that I probably should have put a fill in there to let myself know that the actual background was going to cut off. But again, live and learn, right? Live and learn. There's, again, when that brings up another point, there's a lot of audio cues, you know, kind of to set up what I'm actually doing, using the drums quite a bit for that. Because the guitar parts can't change, right? I mean, they do change, but when the guitar parts change to something else, they're still playing the old part before they play the new part, right? So the drums really helps out a lot with the fills and kind of cueing what's actually going to happen and what's going to change. So, you know, as you're writing your parts, use drum fills quite a bit. Even if you're not going to use them in the actual parts, use them right before the parts change, just to kind of give you, you know, a heads up that they actually are going to change. Now, obviously, if you've got a real drummer, you know, he's gonna, or he or she's just gonna go crazy. Hopefully, putting in all the great fills and things that you want. But when you're writing and, you know, using, because all of the stuff that you're hearing here, my jams are all drum machine jams. And you can, you know, I know. You have this old Roland drum machine. It's called the Roland Human Rhythm Composer. It was really cool. What was really cool about it is, you know, actually from a tone standpoint, the drums themselves don't sound anywhere near as way things sound like they do now, like on Reason and stuff like that. But what was really cool about it is that it actually had, like, when the reason they called it the Human Rhythm Composer is that it actually it had a, like, kind of an algorithm in it that would, like, randomly speed up and slow down, like, just a little bit as far as the drum machine went. So it wouldn't actually be the same tempo all the way through. And why that's such a big deal, we talked a little bit about that before, is that, you know, there's a lot of debate right now that, you know, the putting music to a grid, you know, like every time you quantize something, you suck the soul out of it. Because human, like, music, we can't keep time exactly perfectly. And I'm definitely guilty of that as far as like, because man, I play with the drum machine all the time, and when I play with a real drummer and he or she kind of speeds up or slows down, the first thing I think of is, man, I'm just, they're not playing exactly the same tempo. But then I realize that's my hang up, because the fact that they're doing that actually makes the music sound better. You think it wouldn't, but it really does. And again, we're not talking about like 50 beats per minute difference in the tempo. We're really just kind of talking just a little variation. But a good tune should have kind of a living, breathing pulse to it. A really good one I think that I always think about is "Smells Like Teen Spirit" by Nirvana. That tune, if you actually kind of clock the tempo, or kind of count the tempo all the way through, a 30-second note, definitely a difference. Just anything that can kind of set it up. Just to kind of shift it a little bit. There's a lot of things, obviously, we have to do with being human when it comes to music, because, again, that's the idea, is we're trying to make a human connection, right? Anything that can make the music sound more human. And it's funny these days that everything is trying to sound less human. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about the sounds. I'm not talking about the sounds that people are using. I love the sounds. Like, I'm using an electric guitar with all these crazy effects. I'm not talking about synth sounds or anything like that. Really kind of, they call it the swing function in a DAW now. Okay, that's very cool. How random is that? Is it like, does it speed up and slow down? Or I guess, can you program it, just to really kind of get that going? But again, I know, like, for example, a lot of old, like, rap artists would actually clip their beats a little bit, like kind of cut the, like wherever the head of the impulse was when it hit, the transient, basically, they would kind of cut a little piece off of that to make it sound a little bit ahead or behind the beat when they would actually, doctor it up. But that seems like a lot of work when you can just, obviously for us solo musicians, that's definitely a lot of work. But when you think about having a real drummer, boy, I don't have to worry about that, right? The only problem with that kind of comes into is that, a lot of new producers really like to see. Oh, cool. So, yeah, definitely really cool. Man, I wonder how, may have to definitely play with that. I know producers sometimes get frustrated. The last band that I was in, Witch Doctor, we had a fantastic drummer, Ted. He was really good. But, he didn't like playing to a click track because of that reason. He liked to be able to speed up and slow down. And obviously the producer, he wants everything to be to the click track so that he can rearrange the parts on the grid as best as he can if he needs to change something. I understand. I understand the importance about being able to do that. Being able to set those things up. Going to the click track. I really don't. There's got to be a happy medium, right? You got to be able to kind of do that. The last studio sessions I did with the guys from Witch Doctor, and I didn't actually do, it was kind of more just dealing with one of the guys from Witch Doctor, Pat Aldani, love you, brother. It's kind of like most producers, if they're, they're kind of lenient, kind of like, man, as long as you're kind of close to the click track, they're pretty happy with it, because they're just trying to keep, a basic tempo, and things can be shifted in the DAW. They can be cut apart and shifted without much of a problem. So, but again, it does make it a little easier from a musical creation standpoint to be able to have all of that stuff right to the grid. But I really do think that sucks a lot of that human feel out of the grid, or out of the music. And so kind of, again, my opinion. I could be completely wrong. I am a lot of times, so don't listen to me. Make up your own mind. But again, it's just one of those particular things that there's just been a lot of discussion. Rick Beato talks about that quite a bit, about maybe the fact that, we quantize and super quantize everything. It's made everything have kind of the same feel to it, right? It's kind of like everybody using the same impulse response for their guitar tones in metal bands, right? You buy like a lot of new metal bands. It's like I listen back to my old favorite metal records, and the guitar tones really are different from each other. Whereas a lot of maybe newer metal bands, the tones are kind of all the same, because I think a lot of people are using a lot of the same things that are available to the DAWs. And why not? There's so many great sounds that are available, but we're kind of thinking of it's more along the lines of art, and we kind of want each one to have kind of its unique sound. But you can end up like me, where I'll sit there for hours and hours and hours trying to come up with a new sound, make a recording, and just get frustrated with it and go right back to the same impulse response that I was using before, or whatever cab simulators that I have. So there's always a cross between that too. Let's do another jam. A lot of fun jamming that one. Again, a lot of the patterns, I kind of wanted to make this point earlier, but I didn't get a chance to talk about it, is that, when you think about jamming and playing guitar solos, you can play some pretty wide intervallic skips. Again, I play a lot of scalar stuff because I prefer I don't know, I kind of play all over the place, I guess. But I really like playing things that are a little closer intervallically because I think they sound more vocal. When you think about like the way singers sing, they usually don't take large skips like for example, that last little pattern that I did up on the low E. I played this, whatever I did. I don't remember what I did right before, but whatever it was kind of like a. And when I hit that low E, I went right, and I played all the E's all the way up in basically 4 octaves of E. You don't really hear singers do that kind of stuff very often. I'm not saying they don't, but man, that's kind of crazy. I mean, a 4-octave range, maybe King Diamond or something, or an opera singer. But those things, when you think about like kind of the way a vocal melody goes, it's probably going to go, and again, it's going to be kind of, the singers will obviously dictate that a little bit as well. Maybe when I think about playing like a melody that's going to sound more like a vocal melody. Right, trying to stay within the arpeggio. Try not to jump more than thirds or fours. But as a guitar player, man, we can kind of go right and just kind of go all the way across whatever intervals that we kind of want. Just really stretch them out. Again, there's not a right way or a wrong way to do this. That's the fun of improvisation. You go for it, Overdrive pedal is okay. Yeah. Is it really? Is it buzzing right now? Because I can't hear it through the thing. Okay, it's buzzing now though, right? Yeah, I think it's the I don't know, man. That's the one thing about using my yeah, that's what I thought, man. Yeah, it's basically the lights in the studio. I'm using fluorescent lights. Yeah, it's like when I lift up off the strings, right? So as long as I got, yeah, I can hear it. Yeah, I can hear it. I got to keep my volume off when I'm jamming, and I'm not really sure how to get rid of that. This pedal, this Tone Lab pedal, has always done that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I should have a gate on it. I don't know why there's not a gate on it. I mean, I think there's a gate on it, but I don't think it's set all the way. Thanks, Nick. That's a great advice, though. As far as being able to kind of play, the vocal melodies that we're actually playing, just trying to keep them, and I play stuff that's not really vocal melodies, but just trying to keep closer to that intervallic shade up and distance. Let's do one more jam. Let's see a kind of a heavy rocker we've not done yet. That's kind of cool. good jam. Rob, to answer your question real quick, actually I use both. I do actually think of the arpeggios and the chord changes that are there, and I target the notes sometimes. But then I also like just to kind of play freely. You know, it's kind of like the more skills you know, the better you do. You know, it's like I have all the scale patterns memorized and all the boxes kind of memorized across the guitar, but then I also have a lot of the different things that I'm playing. I'm specifically targeting those things, right? Man, I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. Dude, Rob, thanks a lot for hanging out with us, man. That was great. Nick, thank you so much for hanging out with us as well, man. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the advice, too. I will get a gate on this thing as soon as I possibly can. I'm pretty sure there's a gate on there. I just don't have it actually set. I don't know why it's not set. I do know the one sound that I was using does have a gate, though, because the pickups in this guitar aren't strong enough to get through the gate sometimes. So there's got to be one on here. Hey, man, it has been great. I am Master Lee. This has been the SHred Dojo. Christopher Lee Weiss, a.k.a. Master Lee. Thank you for joining us on Junkie Bass. You guys take it easy, man. Have a great evening, everybody. Peace.